Okay, folks, so we are at our last chapter, public policy. And as I mentioned, your final exam is going to cover chapters 10, 11, and 12. You're going to have the same format, provide short answers to various questions, and you'll have 48 hours to turn your paper in. Okay. So in chapter 12, your author is talking about tax policies, state spending, the education, public education specifically, health and human service policies, transportation policies. It's very public policy focused. State taxes are approximately 49% of the revenue of the entire state. Federal funding is around 33% of revenue for the entire state. We also get interest on investments, public lands, and licensing. All of those fees we have to pay, for instance, are annual fees, registration fees for our cars. That's another source of revenue for the state. You have a textbook in 12.1 that shows your trends in state expenditures. And all of these expenditures is what our budget board, our legislative budget board, looks at every other year. Remember, we meet biannually in the state of Texas, which means we meet every other year, every odd year. So our state legislature is getting ready to meet in January. There's been a considerable amount of growth in state apportionment during the last 2 decades, and increasing in spending has also been significant. So we have quite a lot of catching up to do because our population is growing significantly, and we do also have to take inflation into account. Figure 12.2 of your textbook is very good for showing how revenues are taken into account by our Texas comptroller, which remember is the financial keeper of the state. So figure 12.2 shows you various sources. And for instance, like I mentioned, federal funds are 33%. Motor fuel taxes is 3.2. Motor vehicle sales and rental taxes are 4.6. So that figure gives you a very good a good assessment and feeling for where we get our revenues for the entire state of Texas. Our taxation, that's where we get a lot of our sources. General sales tax, we all know what that is. Those are sales taxes that we pay almost for everything. Taxes collected on retail price on most items that we purchase. That is called general sales tax, and that is a huge portion of our revenues for the state. Selective sales tax, that's taxes that are levied on specific sales like liquor, cigarettes, gasoline. Those are called selective sales tax. So we have pretty much taxation on almost everything we purchase on a daily basis, and all of these accumulate for the revenues that we collect. Other taxes are property taxes and personal property taxes. Our tax rate, we hear about our tax rate quite a bit. It is the amount per unit that we tax on any type of activity. Our tax base is the actual object that is being taxed. So clothing item, that is the tax base. Tax rate is how much we tax on every time we purchase clothing items. Those are the two different examples. Regulatory taxes, those are taxes that reward approved behavior for lower taxes or punish social and desirable actions with higher taxes. For instance, There are always going to be laws that say we should have higher taxes for cigarettes or for alcohol, because those are examples of regulatory taxes. Again, taxes that reward approved behavior versus taxes for socially undesirable behavior. Progressive tax rates. That means your rates will increase as your income increases. So the higher your income, the higher the tax rate you will pay. An example of a progressive tax rate is, of course, federal income tax rates. Regressive is the opposite of that. Your tax rates that effectively decline as your income increases. Supply side economics. Those of you who are economics majors, I'm not going to go into detail. Your textbook goes into a little bit of detail, especially for those of us who are more political science on the left brain. But supply side economics is the theory that taxes on higher income individuals should be kept low to allow them to save and invest more into the economy. That's called supply side economics. We saw that we get 33% of our revenue from the federal government. Well, general obligation bonds, there are bonds that are repaid by general revenues. They are voter approved. Other non-tax revenues that your textbook will cover: lottery, licensing, fines and fees, dividends from investments from your portfolio, and sale and leasing of public land. Remember the graph that we just looked at in Chapter 11 that had for municipalities how much they spend? Well, we have something very similar for states. In Chapter 12, it is 12.5, and it shows your state appropriations. For instance, education and health and human services. Those are the two largest areas, policy areas that we spend the most: education and health and human services. Your textbook goes into the various forms of public education. One thing I will say is that our current governor wanted to make sure that we started focusing more on public and higher education. And we've seen an increase in funding from the state. One in particularly, we saw increases not only in public funding from the state, but in the last couple of legislatures, but we also saw significant increase in pay for teachers and other administrators. And that is his pledge that he made to make sure that Texas would be focused on public education. Your textbook goes into public versus higher education, and I know some of you are watching very closely what's going on at the national level, because Joe Biden has said that if he is in office, he would erase all loan debt. So many students, including my two sons, are looking at that closely. Health programs, socialized medicine. We've had a lot of serious discussions about socialized medicine, especially with the latest round of healthcare that came out of the President Obama's administration. And again, Joe Biden has said that we will see very comparable policies like what we saw from the Obama administration. Strictly defined socialized medicine in a healthcare system in which the government hires medical practitioners to work at government-owned facilities to directly provide health care, such as what we see in Great Britain, U.S. veterans and military hospitals. So, that is very briefly what we saw in Chapter 12. Again, your final exam will cover Chapters 10, 11, and 12. I will be posting the questions shortly, well, within the next week or so. I will also have your due date because for each class it's different. And you will have 48 hours once I post your exam questions to return the paper, short answers for each. And then I will turn around with your grades within a week of your due date of your final exam. Stay warm. Thank you.